No, I'm all sorted. They'll take care of themselves. I've got batteries on them, so they're not going to run out. Cool. So, for people who don't know me, I'm Ked Shayer. I am one of the coaches. I've been flying for about 10 years now, believe it or not. I'm far from a sky god, but I do know how to do some thermaling. So that is what we're going to talk about tonight. It's not a very long set of slides, it's only like 10, 12 slides or something, so it shouldn't take that long, but as a result, it'd be nice to have lots of questions and make it a bit more interactive, right? That would be cool. So there's probably slightly too many people to go around and do like introductions with everyone, but maybe just get an idea. So, I don't know, who's like a red ribbon, for example? Brilliant, that's really helpful. Who has done a bit of thermaling?
Very slightly. Very.
Great. Good.
You mean
All right.
intentional, not just getting
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, follow the leader.
Nice one. So that's the absolutely perfect audience for this talk, I think. If you're a bit more experienced, I think there's probably stuff in here that would be useful for you as well. So that's cool. Yeah, like I said, any questions, it would be good if you shout to make it a bit more interactive. So normally I do this as a Skype coaching thing because I don't always get a chance to get out and meet people on the hills. And someone asked me to do something on safety on sites every time I did a talk. So we were just talking about this. There's been a few things in New Haven recently. All I would say is with New Haven, it is a really cool site. I think, like particularly with your number of hours, it can be really nice just to have some smooth flying, relaxed flying. You don't have to be too stressed about thermaling. You know, it's quite a long ridge, isn't it? So you can get spread out from people. So that's all really nice. If you're not pilot rated, you shouldn't be going around the corner. But even if you are pilot rated, which you're probably not if you're at this talk, because you need to do 3 500-foot climbs.
Just a word on that, because we've been discussing it to the committee in the context of the site guide. At the moment, round the corner is pilot rated for hang gliders and CP plus 10
Oh, is it?
for paragliders. The intention is to vary that slightly and recommend it as CP plus 10 in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Because one of the incidents was a pilot who not only had a small number of hours, but was really non-current. And what you need to be able to do is a safe bottom landing in a small area. And
Correct.
that's a lot of worry if you haven't done a lot of flying recently.
It doesn't matter if you have done lots of flying recently. First bit, where there's a stony beach, everything is fine, right? But once you get around from there, if you look down at the landing options, they are incredible. And if the wind switches off at New Haven and you're like 10 seconds away from landing, it just happens like that when you're on the ground. So I'm not trying to discourage anyone from flying there. I think it's a good place to fly, but be careful about going around the corner, like you are a lot more committed then. Just be thinking I could be landing in 5 seconds, so be taking some time to just look at the landing spots underneath you, and if you're not feeling comfortable about what you're flying over, then go back to something that you are comfortable to fly over. And so hopefully some of you come from like a sailing, kite surfing kind of background, or maybe just used to hang out by the sea. Hopefully you can read the wind strength on the sea a bit. If you can't, it would be a good skill to develop. So normally you're flying there and it's like just before white capping. White capping is just where the waves start to break a little bit and you start to see like little white foam on the top of the waves. So you want to be checking the sea all the time when you're flying in New Haven. If it's sort of like a bit choppy, that's probably good. If you see loads of white caps come, it might make sense to just come back and land. If it's getting stronger, maybe land at the bottom rather than landing at the top and just give it 10 minutes and see what happens. If it starts to go really glassy and smooth on the sea, that's another good time to come back and top land. Look, you can come back, if you make a decision early, you can come back, top land, ground handle for 5 minutes, have a chat with people. If it's still fine, you can launch again, you'll be happy. That's the way to fly there. So yeah, that's my tips on New Haven.
Can I make 3 points in relation to New Haven? We were talking about it earlier, but perhaps not everybody heard it. There are 3 main risks on flying our cliff sites. First is the tide, knowing where it is in terms of coming in and out and when.
Yep.
The second is rotor on the cliff top, which makes top landing dangerous in many conditions, and also launching. I think that was the problem, or part of the problem, with someone who got pitched into the gorse bushes yesterday. The third point is temperature, sea temperature and land temperature. In the summer months, the sea warms up and retains that heat better than the land does. If you've got warm air, if you've got hot air over the land and cooler air coming off the sea, that sea air is not going to rise, it's going to sink once it reaches the land air. So it's not going to be lifty normally in the months when the sea temperature is colder than the air temperature on the land.
Yeah, I think Martin's going to do a talk on that at some point, because that is definitely something to consider.
I know he was writing an article on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Has he written it or not yet?
Given that he's in the British Championship.
But I think that's right. You know, it's the tide, it's the changing wind, and there are the other things like the stability, which is even more important at beachy head. You shouldn't really fly beachy head in the summer, basically, because if the sea is warmer than the land is warmer than the sea, then the air's not going to go up. And the beachy, just sort of like the air just goes up to like the top of the cliff, or like 2/3 of the way up the cliff, and then just like goes meh. So that's really unhelpful. Anyway, that's not what today is about. And I saw Carlos saying that someone had been overflying the cottages at Caburn, so just try not to do that. Like, if you're thermaling high over the cottages, it's fine, right? But if you're coming into land and you have, then just try to be like the landing field side of the trees, basically, so you don't bother the guys who kindly let us use their field. Cool, so thermaling isn't the easiest thing to learn or the easiest thing to teach. This one presentation isn't going to like make you a thermaling Jedi for sure. Sorry about that. Maybe it'll help. But there's things you can do. You know, one of the things you can generally do with your development, particularly if you're low on hours, there's flying hours, right, which is really important for you guys when you're red ribbons, but you can get hours, what I consider hours, by just spending time on paragliding, right? So, yeah, I've got a family and a full-time job, so I don't get out flying as much as I want, but I try to dedicate a bit of time to like educating myself about flying. Those are all hours as well. So there's 2 book recommendations. The #1 book for paragliding, in my opinion, is Thermal Flying by Bernard Martins. Everyone should have a copy of that. If you don't have a copy of that, go and buy one. That's not optional. I also like Mastering Paragliding by Kelly Freeman. I think that's a really good one. So that's also a recommendation. And yeah, you may pick up thermaling. Hopefully this talk will help. Hopefully some flying in the UK will help, but you can't really beat like a dedicated course. So yeah, a lot of good pilots have been to Kelly. He's quite a divisive character, I'd say, but I think he has like a lot to teach on paragliding. And yeah, I can recommend one of his courses enough, to be honest. Fly Sussex do some thermaling courses. I saw they do some in Lorania, so I'm sure they'd be really good as well. I'm sure there's other options, but yeah, if you're struggling with thermaling, I think taking a whole week out somewhere where there's like good, wide, easy thermals, and not the UK, would definitely help. Cool. So, what I can't do with thermaling is tell you guys, oh, if you're going along and the wing does this, then you need to do that with this hand and that with that hand and lean this way, and if it does this, you've got to do that. It's impossible to teach you like every configuration of your wing and the thermal, and for you to ever have any hope of remembering what to do that way anyway. So that idea doesn't really work with thermaling. Like, I think the way to teach it, and this is all like stolen off of Kelly, basically, this is how he teaches thermaling, is that there's some concepts that we try to teach you guys that hopefully aren't too complicated and you can understand. And if you learn those concepts and practice flying according to those concepts, then your thermally will improve and improve. And still working on every one of those bullet points 10 years in, I reckon. Definitely, so it's a journey, eh? But if you can understand all of these core concepts, you'll be on your way to a journey. So, back when I was a Red Ribbon, I wanted to get some thermaling advice off of Carlo, and he told me, I just like turn where it's lifty. But at the time, I found quite unhelpful. But as I've got better, I mean, that is basically what you're doing, eh? Like, you want to do a nice smooth circle in some lift. So that is the basics of what we're trying to achieve, right? It's just turning in a smooth circle in some lift where the vario is always beeping and going up. If you can do that, you're going to go up. So that's point number one. Point number two is the golden rule. Let's see if I can pull this off. So the idea is, however the wing moves, you keep your progress through the air as smooth and constant as possible, and you're avoiding any bumps or surges or swings. So if any of you have done some SIV, or even if you just like flown near the ground, maybe you know, like if you do an oscillation like that, you tend to go down, right? Like if it's bumpy, then your glider is less efficient and your sink rate increases, you're going to go down. So that is something to avoid when you're thermaling. You want yourself to be making like a nice smooth turn around. And if the air is quite active, and it's going to be active if we're going to have a good chance to learn to thermal, it's going to be turbulent, then the air may be moving around quite a lot. You might be putting quite a lot of control on the wing, letting it go forward and backwards, left and right, leaning away in and out. And the wing might be moving around quite a lot, but the goal is to keep yourself really smooth. So that's the golden rule. And that is hard to master, and I'm often shouting at myself for not doing that as well as I can do. And so what the golden rule is about flying really efficiently. So you've kind of got two things with thermaling. One is positioning yourself. So some bits of the air are going to be liftier than others. So one thing you want to do is position yourself. And the other thing you want to do is fly really efficiently. So minimise your sink rate by flying really efficiently. And either one of those could be enough for you to go up instead of going down. So you guys might be practicing some thermaling and you find you're just going down a bit, like you're not really going up, but you might be going down at like 0.2 of a second down. If you just flew a little more smoothly, even if you don't change anything, improve your centering of a thermal at all, just making the wing a little bit more efficient might be enough to turn that 0.2 down into a 0 or a 0.1 up. And then you'll be going up, and then you'll be thinking, oh, I'm thermaling now, like everything's great. So that could be the difference between staying up and getting, starting to feel what a thermal is like and enjoying it, or just going down.
Again, I think a point that's often overlooked is that in still air, a glider will sink at about 1 metre per second. So if you're sinking at 0.5 metres per second, you're actually in rising air. You don't want to leave that for air that's not rising unless you've got somewhere better to go.
Big time. I mean, that is like a bit of a cross-country thing, isn't it? But if you guys ever move on to cross-country in the UK, the secret to cross-country in the UK is just to use zeros as much as possible. So just try to keep your feet off the ground for hours and hours and hours. And it's not all about... Thermaling is not really like how I read about it in the books of like, oh, I'm going to fly along, it's going to like be close, I'm going to do like 2 circles to cool the thermal, and then like boom, I'm going to go straight to cloud base. That's not how thermaling works. It doesn't work like that anyway. I don't know like why people come up with that description of thermaling, but it's definitely not like that in the UK. In the UK, it's often just like Robin said, just being in a 0, just staying up. That's a really good skill. So I totally agree with that. Good. So 4 for 90 is about how tight you turn. Who wants to tell me how long they think it takes them to do a 360? Those of you who tried to practice doing a few 360s.
Well, I was trying to do some today, and it took me forever. I was not 60 seconds. It was like really wide.
Cool. So that.
Because then when I try to make it sharper, then I'm losing height, and I feel that I'm sinking. Well, I'm going down.
Yeah. But you're not.
I'm
But
not-
you're not. No. Well, you wouldn't be if you were doing a nice tight turn into the lift. So.
I'm trying to lean in
Yeah.
to it as much as I can, but I still feel like I'm losing height.
You might be losing height. So what you're describing of doing this like really long circle is probably what all of you guys are doing thermally, honestly. So 4 for 90, what it means is that a whole 360 should take 16 seconds, but no one can count to 16 or remember how far 360 degrees is in the air. So cut it into 4, right? In each 90-degree turn should take about 4 seconds, and that's quite quick, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, that's about 4, right? So this is not 3, that's about right, isn't it? It's quite tight. Yeah, it's going to feel pretty tight for you, but that is pretty much what you want to aim for your ideal speed of 360. So pretty much guarantee none of you guys are doing that, and so that's like something to start practicing, right? Even if you can't thermal, even if you were like New Haven or Beachley or something and there's no thermals, you could just practice that, like trying to do a 360, obviously nice and far out the front when you started, but just try practicing doing a 360 and look, I'll count, okay, I've turned 90 degrees, that took like 8 seconds, that's probably not ideal. Let's try to actually lean into it, get some inside brake on and make that turn 4 for 90. That's a great thing to practice.
I think, sorry, I've recently just come from a low B to a high B. I think for a low B, especially when you're trying to turn that tightly, it will go into a dive. It will roll and then die and then try and flatten out. You lose your energy quite quickly. So if you can try and turn quite tightly, try and think of your energy and where the wind's coming from, because you can turn really quickly. Turning away from the wind, you need to keep your energy up so that when you turn into the wind, your glider's still got enough energy to actually make the turn. Otherwise, it will just flatten out and you'll end up not penetrating back into the thermal and you'll end up at the back and you'll just end up in the sink around the back of the thermal.
So that ties brilliantly from this point actually, which is called treat the air as it treats you. So this is another really cool thermaling concept. So you will, one of the reasons I can't just tell you guys to do this thermaling is because there's infinite variations of conditions you might be flying in. We can fly in 0 to 18 miles an hour of wind, so that's a huge variation in wind speed. And then we could fly in really weak thermals, or we fly in no thermals. We could fly in like really weak thermals, but they could be quite wide. We can fly in big, strong thermals, which is what you want for starting, but you're not going to find them in the UK. You can get tiny little bullet cores, which are like really strong. So the point is there's like infinite variety of air out there that you might be therming in. And a good concept to think about is to treat the air as it treats you. So the idea of this is I'm doing my 360, and what I find is that as I go around the turn, I'm feeling the air through the wing. And normally what happens is you're trying to keep your 4 for 90, and what will either happen is that you'll hit a bit of sink and it will kind of suck you into the turn a bit. So you'll be flying around and you'll just feel, oh, I'm going faster now. Or you might be going around and you hit a strong bit of lift and it like feels like it's pushing you out, and you have to really give it some weight shift and some extra brake to keep that 4 for 90 going. And treat the air as it treats you is kind of a way of thinking about that. So if you're flying around nice and smoothly and then you feel, oh, I'm just like my turn's just getting a bit shallower, I'll just give it like a little bit of weight shift and that might be enough just to maintain that 4 for 90. Okay. happy, just keeping smooth on 4 for 90 again, I can just feel the speed of the turns just crept up a little bit. It's a bit faster than 4 for 90 now. You might just use a tiny bit of outside brake just to slow it down and keep it 4 for 90. That's how you adapt on quite a smooth day with sort of gentle lift and not much change in lift and sink or everything's feeling really smooth. Yeah, the air's smooth and I'm going to treat the air smoothly. The opposite you might get is like a head banging, bullet thermal day where it's like you're going along, nothing's happening, it's like BAM! The wind goes back and then it's like shooting forward, and then you need to be quite aggressive when the air's aggressive. So, you know, the wing would shoot, you'll do a big weight shift, big brake, and you'll be responding to the power of the air with some powerful movements. Now, you guys are all learning, right? So don't want you all to be like spinning into the ground, saying that I told you to just hammer it. So it's something to work on, but you know, start to feel how the air feels to you, the way that your wing is reacting to it, and just try to respond to what the air does. You know, try to mirror it.
So when you're flying and the wind is behind you, you're going faster, and when you're coming
not
into
going
wind,
faster.
You're not going faster. It just
Your
feels.
airspeed's the same,
Your
isn't
airspeed
it?
is faster.
Your ground speed's faster, but your airspeed's the same.
So are you saying you don't actually, because it does, because you can see that you're going faster relative to the ground. So you think you're going faster.
Yeah.
And the reverse when you're going into
Correct.
wind. With the thermal, are you aware of it being faster and slower, or are you not?
I think that is an optical illusion that you get into when you're a beginner pilot, that I know exactly what you're talking about, but you've got to just talk yourself out of it. Your airspeed is always the same. So what's probably happening is you're like, say you turn towards downwind, you see your ground speed increases loads and you think, oh shit, the hill's coming. So it's like you hammer on the brakes some more. Now you've turned your 4 for 90 into like 2 for 90 to try to spin around so you don't smash into the hill. Then you come out this way and it's like, oh, everything's really smooth, so I can just chill out, and then you're going to do like a big long turn like this. Oh, everything's cool. And then a little one like that. That's not 4 for 90. So I've totally done that, and that's not going to keep you in the core, because the core is going to move back with the wind, right? So I know exactly what you're talking about, but that's your brain lying to you.
But the higher you are, and the further you are away from the ground as a reference point,
Yeah.
the less obvious that becomes. What you need to do is to detach yourself from the ground and get used to the sound and the feel of the wind in your face and things like that, so that you're relating to the air mass that you're flying through at, as Ked says, a constant speed, and that whole air mass is moving relative to the ground. It doesn't matter what's happening on the ground. You're not part of the ground apart from when you take off and when you land.
Yeah. That's why thermal is great, because you can just ignore the ground. It's not where we want to be. Good. Magnet effect, another really nice one. So we're going to talk about getting out in front of the hill and finding climbs in front of the hill. If you are, like the hill is where the projector is and I'm right out in front of the hill, I might find a 0.2 climb, and what I find is if I drift back with that climb, when I get to the hill, that air that's just gently rising is going to hit the hill and the wind will whoosh it up the hill, and that 0.2 will turn into a 1. It's called magnet effect. So it's like as the climb hits the hill, it's like a magnet, and that is a really nice effect to use and to know about when you're doing your thermaling, particularly when you're starting, because you can get out, away from the crowds, you can practice thermaling like a weak thermal that doesn't feel too bumpy or scary, and you can commit to that gentle climb, and then when you get to the hill, you will have circled just a little bit above everyone, so all of those people blocking you on the ridge who are normally terrifying will be just beneath you, and your climb will improve, and then you'll be able to get a nice thermal from there. So magnet effect's a brilliant thing to start learning about.
Equally, that dissipate. if you're got the height and you're going behind the hill, then that will dissipate and come back down to an extent, won't it?
Depends, but that is bottom point there. So we'll get to that. Yeah, when you're joining thermals, so you guys have the potential to be a bit annoying to us. It's fine. Like most of us are big enough to accept it, but there's a couple of things you can do which will be quite annoying to everyone else. One is, like, someone goes out front and finds a thermal, and you're like, that thermal seems cool, and you fly straight at them, and they found the thermal, and you fly straight at them, and the only thing they can do to avoid crashing into you is to leave the thermal which they put in the effort and took the risk to find. So, yeah, flying straight at people in the thermal isn't very nice. And the other thing you will do until you get your 4 to 90 down is, like, someone will be doing a nice set of turns like this, and you're going to come in and be doing your, like, really lazy turn, and there's a point you're trying to hit each other, and it's just safer to go and do the lazy turn with the person who is learning. So that's absolutely, all of that is fine, because that's what it's like learning thermal, so it's not a big deal. But one thing you need to work on when you're improving your thermaling is how to fly nicely with others. So what Mark Watts says, which I'm definitely not recommending, is when you drive home tonight, try to join a roundabout without using the brake. So the idea is you will be like coming.
To then?
The idea is you'll be coming up to the roundabout, and you will slow down a certain amount, and you're looking at the traffic coming around the roundabout, and you find a little hole to slot into, and you never have to do like a big brake or a big speed up. That's the same thing with the thermaling, right? So you're watching the people going around, you're going to come up and join them, and you're going to try to slot in to a gap, like behind them, and just follow them.
The trouble is that if you're on a low spec wing, their glide ratio is so much better that they lap you.
No.
No?
No.
Similar speed, they'll just go up higher. They'll climb up.
They might outclimb you, but they won't be flying any faster than you.
Oh.
So the
that
difference
it's
in
just-
glide ratio between an A and a C is not that great.
No.
Oh, so it isn't. It is just the pilot that makes the difference
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
going round.
Yeah, probably what you're experiencing with them lapping you is they're actually turning nice and tight, and you're turning really loosely, and they're going around inside you. Climbing up. Yeah, exactly. Gandhi's glider's on the wingtip, and you won't see him turning inside you for very long because he's where the air's going up.
So it reminded me, Ked, of another Mark Watts saying, which is something like this. Of course, paragliding is dangerous. We spend all our time flying around in the air looking for turbulence.
That's all about. It's got to be rough to be good.
Do you just want to turn the lights on?
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
Marvellous, thank you.
Cool, so that's something to work on. You guys are learning, so no one's expecting you to be out front finding the first thermal, right? There is one of the downsides about flying in Sussex is it can be quite busy, but you know, it's good to turn negative into a positive, right? The positive of that is that there's always gliders out the front of the hill thermaling who are showing you where the lift is. So for you guys, you can just go out and join them, but when you go and join them, try to make sure you're not disturbing them. Right? They've gone out front, they've taken a risk of landing at the bottom of the hill to try and find a thermal, so respect that and just try to watch them turning and join with them in a way that isn't going to disrupt their turns. It's a lot easier to say than do, honestly, so like it will need a lot of work, and you'll mess it up, and the odd person might shout at you, but that's cool, just don't crash into anyone, and just try to keep improving. Good, and yeah, I talked about this earlier, but that thing of like coring a thermal to base, bullshit, I don't know who made that up, like maybe it's like that somewhere, but I've never paraglided anywhere where it's like that. It is a constant effort thermally. You will do a few 360s and move yourself towards some nice lift and be in a smooth bit of lift for like 3 360s, and then it will just piss off in that direction. So you've got to follow it. It's a constant effort of moving around trying to improve the strength of the lift that you're in. Anyway, and then you often will hit like a little area of temperature inversion that might just shed all the soft outside bits of the thermal. It gets like really rough for a bit, or very sharp edged. You know, it's like smooth, and then you hit like a strong bit of lift, and then it's disappearing, goes sharp edged. That's like an inversion. wind shear, often like the thermal will just disappear off downwind or upwind or something. So it's not. So if you're potentially maybe getting discouraged because you're like, oh, I've done 2 360s and like I haven't cooled the thermal, I'm not cloud based. It's not like that. It's a constant battle to try to find that little bit of air that's actually going up, and that's a constant battle all the way from the ground to cloud base, and all the way from your next climb to cloud base, all day. Good. So questions?
Well,
Quite a
yeah,
lot
just on that last point then. So you're you're doing your 490s and you're still going up, and then suddenly you stop.
Yeah.
Going up. So what would you do then? Would you start to open up those turns so that you to try and explore and see
exactly.
where the lift has gone?
Yeah. So I'll kind of talk through how to do a thermal on the next slide, but yeah, exactly. What you want to do is you'll be flying along, you hear the vario go beep, you count to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's still beeping, then that's a decently wide amount of air for you to turn in. You do the turn and you listen, and you try to get your 4 to 90. You try to do your golden rule and keep the turn really smooth and keep at 4 for 90 no matter what happens. And you listen, and what you'll find is half of the turn it will be beeping going up, and half the turn it won't be beeping going up as much. So then you know the stronger bit of lift seems to be over in that direction. So if I'm going over here, I'm just going to do what you call opening the turn. So I'm making it a bit less tight, a bit more gentle turn, opening it. And I'm just going to curve my way over. And it's not like I'm just going to fly 100 metres over there, right? I'm talking like you might just pull the outside brake for like a couple of seconds and that'll just shift you a few metres. You go around and listen again and feel the air and feel, oh, it's strong, but it's a bit more this way this time. So then I'll try going over there. And then sometimes you might hit something really strong and you might just want to do magnet effect and just push into that strong bit and see how that goes. But it's like that, eh? It's like you want to constantly be listening to what the vario is telling you and feeling what the wing is doing, what your harness is doing, and constantly moving your turn all the time. Like, you never want to just do like 2 360s in a row in the same place. It should be always moving. Yeah, that's what it's like if you follow Gandhi. I followed Gandhi for about 8 years, and after 8 years I could keep up with him, kind of. Well, most of the first 8 years I just landed at the bottom of the hill, but it's something to try. How we do? Cool. Any other questions on that one, actually? That's only one. Hello, come in. Yeah, alright. Okay, this one normally comes to the break, doesn't it? So why don't we do this slide? We could have 10 minutes for a drink and then do another like half hour or something, that'll be that? Yeah. Cool. So, we talked about a lot of concepts. Have a think about them over the break as well. And if you've got any questions, like, give me a shout. One-to-one or ask next time. Those concepts are what you really want to work on when you're thermaling, but how do we like basically thermal? So, kind of talked you through it already. So we're going to be flying along, listening to the vario, it's going up, start counting, 1, 2, lift's gone, so I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to keep flying. Oh, beeping again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that feels good. Then I would like to turn, check the airspace. Easy in the Southern Club, so we only turn right, so that takes half the decision away from you. So you want to look over your right-hand shoulder and check if you're going to crash into anyone. If you're going to crash into anyone, you're not going to do any turning, right? As you get more confident, you'll find, like, if you're looking over your shoulder and looking back to the ridge, there's pilots, they might be back on the ridge, you might be a couple hundred metres out front. When you start, those pilots back on the ridge, they look like you're going to crash into them, and that can be like really intimidating. As you practice a bit more, then you'll find that there's a certain distance away that's fine, you can turn inside them, and there's a certain distance away that isn't fine. But for now, let's be really conservative, check our airspace, no one near me. So now I will go strong weight shift right. So big body movement right, count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll use a bit of inside brake just to improve or tighten that turn up. Count to 2, 1, 2, and I'll just use a little bit of outside brake, not loads, just like a touch of outside brake, just so I can kind of feel the outside tip of the glider and I've got like that bit of extra control. And that's me starting, and then I'm just going to concentrate on my 4 for 90. So I usually, it's not really like foolproof what people use their brakes for, but if you want a bit of a guide, I would usually, if I want to make like a big change to the turn, if I want to hammer it in tight because I feel a big strong bit of air, or if I want to totally loosen up, then I'll probably use the inside brake. If I'm trying to do that golden rule thing, the treating the air as it treats you, if I just like feel the wing slide in a bit, then I just use a little bit of outside brake just to counter it. And if I feel the wing just try and push me out of the turn, I normally just come off the outside brake, and that will just give it enough energy to keep going. So sort of I mainly use my outside brake to kind of stabilise those little movements, and I only really use the inside brake if I need to get a bit more aggressive. And then, like I said, we're going to go round, and try to do my 4 for 90. Oh, air's pushing me away, so off the outside brake, maybe a bit more inside brake, keep that 4 for 90 going, listening. Okay, that was the bit that was beeping, now it's not beeping as much, so I've hit that strong bit. I'm going to let it open up now, and just move myself a little bit that way. Now that's still beeping, I'm going to try and do my 4 for 90 this way. Oh, it's a bit weak over here, so really just a tiny bit of outside brake just to move the turn, just a tiny little bit, try and go over there, and it's like that. Keep going, keep listening to the vario, really concentrating, listening to the vario, feeling the wing, trying to obey the golden rule to keep your turn really smooth, and trying to move your circles around to find the strongest bits of lift. That's it. Alright, cool, that's about halfway through, so if you want to grab a drink, and then...
Quick question now, if you said the strong weight shift and count to 3,
Yeah.
and then you use the inside brake, why do you do it that way and not weight shift and brake at the same time?
Load the wing up.
Why did you do it that way? This is what Carlo taught me. I just don't like it 10 years ago. I think that you get, so if you're going to weight shift, you're not actually distorting the wing as much, right? So it's like a nice smooth entry. If you just do weight shift, you're just doing like a nice efficient entry, and then you're going to use the brake to sort of tighten it a bit. If you don't do any weight shift and just brake, you're going to really slow that side down, and it's going to do a woo pitch, brake and golden rule. You're going to lose 10 metres just when you enter the thermal, and that might be enough to make you go down instead of up. So this is like a really smooth thermal entry, which is a good thing to practice.
Basically, there are 2 ways to turn: weight shift and brake. Brake slows one side of the wing. When the wing slows, it descends more quickly. So the more you can turn using just weight shift, the flatter and more efficient your turn is. But there's a limit to how much you can do just through weight shift. So you need to apply usually a little bit of brake, and maybe a bit of outside brake to balance it. But if, as Ked says, all you do is brake, you're going to lose height more quickly than if you can do a flatter, more efficient turn.
Yeah, and you make a pitch movement, right? So if you brake right, the right hand side of the wing's also going to go back, and then the glide's going to want more speed. You slowed it down, so it's going to dive forward, so you've made a pitch movement straight away, and that's going to lose you height immediately.
When I turn, I do weight shift, I probably pull the brake a bit too quickly.
Yeah, I think you can, that will wind up, right? So if you hammer on quite a lot of weight shift, it's not going to just immediately go fast. I can keep that weight shift on, it will wind up a bit. And once it's wound up, that's what I'm saying, then you do the inside brake. So that's kind of 1, 2, 3, just to let the turn establish itself. One of the other things Kelly says is never to be locked. Like, you're not locked static. You're not just like, I'm on 100% weight shift and I've got my brakes like this, and I'm just going to stay like that. It's like you should be constantly moving. So I'm always moving my weight shift and moving the brakes a bit, just trying to like keep that golden rule, keep really smooth. So it's not like you're doing 100% weight shift and brake and just leaving it. It's like that's the way to start. And you just want to be feeling the air. The little things you can do with a bit of weight shift or a bit of outside brake, and the bigger things might need a big weight movement and a big inside brake to keep going. More questions?
Well, but regarding this weight shifting, it's really important how is your harness set up as well, isn't it? I think I realized it today that if it's too tight, just here, you can't really weight
Yeah,
shift
the
as much.
carabiners should be like there to there, shouldn't they? Basically, roughly. So if your carabiners aren't there to there, wedge fist, then that's
Yeah,
definitely.
I loosened it up a little bit today,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a lot more efficient.
This is how it's certified, so if you're not here to here, then you're flying an uncertified glider, so you want to probably have a look at that.
I noticed that when it was a bit tighter, you noticed you felt a little bit more stable.
Yeah.
You opened it up a little bit. You now don't feel stable, but you do notice that yes, you can weight shift so much easier.
Yeah, but I wouldn't mess with it too much. You don't want it like here to there. That's like not certified. So I don't think that's. I'll try and get that back to that setting, but I wouldn't be messing around with that one too much. There's like other straps on the harness which I'm no expert on. You can probably play with. But the other thing is also like how you weight shift, and it depends if you're in a seated harness or a pod. Like when I moved to the pod, I had to relearn how to weight shift. 'Cause you really do it by twisting your hips rather than like when you're in a seated harness, you pretty much just cross your legs and like lean, and that's it. When you move to a pod harness, you kind of have to wiggle your hips.
Probably also depends whether you've got a seat board as well. It's
Yeah.
easier to weight shift if you've got something solid underneath your backside.
But I have a seat board and I had to totally relearn how to weight shift when I was on my pod harness. That's how it felt to me anyway.
So with one of these really lightweight ones, which are just sort of bags that you sit in, like a sort of for the hike and fly, you see people. So how do they weight shift with that?
Well, it's still either a pod harness or a seated harness. It's
Okay.
same.
So it's just a slightly different technique.
Yeah, pod harness. It's like you kind of because you're laying back a lot, you lean your hips. When you're sitting up, you just basically.
You talk about SIV earlier. That's one of the reasons why it's important when you do an SIV. You do it in your own harness, the harness you fly in.
And if you're looking up at your wing, which you might or might not be, because you might be looking at people who try to crash into you,
Better choice.
your wing should just be nice and flat and not doing anything.
First of all, you shouldn't really be looking at your wing unless it's collapsing. Like
Okay.
if you're getting into something dynamic, then you should be immediately looking at your wing. But if you're flying around, you won't get out of that habit of looking at your wing because it's not helping. You should be able to feel the movements of your wing. So I would generally try and get out of that habit as much as you can and like spend more time looking around, seeing what the pilots are doing. So that's much more helpful. What's it going to look like? Well, I don't know. Depends. The golden rule is about keeping your body still, right? So sometimes if it's like really rowdy conditions, the wing can be all over the place. But I'm just trying to keep myself smooth. So no, I don't think just get out of that totally. To be honest.
Does the way how you sit in your harness, does it somehow affect the wing, how it behaves?
What the SIV guys say is like what's really important is that you're totally relaxed and like your weight is committed into the harness the way it's meant to be, right? So if you're tensed up like this, yeah, that's going to stop it because you're not laid back into the harness properly. Your muscles are really tense, they're not loose like I was talking about. So the main thing is just be relaxed back into it.
I'm more thinking if it, because I sit there pretty much in an upright position right now, but I feel like maybe I should lean back.
You've got the harness, you've got you should be, your core shouldn't really be active unless you're doing like hard weight shifts. So if you're feeling like this, like your core's really active, you're not like relaxed into the harness. But if you're relaxed in the harness, your harness is upright, that's the harness you got, so that's fine. No problem.
I noticed a similar thing myself the other day. I realised I was actually sitting up, and I suddenly realised I could relax a bit more.
Exhale.
Pretty normal.
Rather than being, and it was only a small movement, but rather than being like this, I was, my harness was.
Yeah, if it gets bumpy, it's pretty normal to like tense up, right?
Yeah.
And then that's
is
definitely
important.
something to be on top of, is like trying to make sure you're relaxed all the time, you're breathing slow, all that stuff really helps.
It is important to have the harness set up correctly, and you can get that done in a hang point with a fly sussie. I know if you buy a new harness from Flybop, for example, you spend ages having it adjusted until it's right for you, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, no normal person has any idea how to set up a harness, so if your harness doesn't feel right, go to like a professional course. Only like Carla and Steve know the secret of that.
Yeah.
But it's magic, eh? They just like pull a bunch of straps.
It does make
Don't ask me for any advice, because normal people can't do it.
With the tense thing, when I was learning anyway, I was told try flying with your tongue between your teeth, and you'll know if you're tense or not. It starts getting painful, you know you're tense.
I get shaky arm syndrome.
Yeah.
Does that affect?
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
stop.
I think breath is really important.
Yeah.
Like through the nose and through the mouth, and 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. Yeah, I used to have like a lot of problems with air sickness, which is still not, I haven't like conquered, but it was often like made a lot worse by being like that burns your energy and tenses you up and gets you air sick really quickly. So that's one thing I concentrate on a lot. It's like trying to slow my breathing down and like relax myself more. Particularly if you want to start flying for like 4 or 5 hours, you've got to be relaxed.
You have Ked's rule, 4 breaths for 360.
Yeah, there you are. Perfect. 4, what's it? 4 for 4 for 4. Yeah, 4 in, 4 out for 4 minutes is like a mental reset. So there you are. That's over many circles.
So, having a break? Or?
Yeah. Alright, keep going. Cool, so we talked about how to thermal once you found some lift. So the next thing to talk about is how to find that lift to thermal in. So yeah, if we're going to learn to thermal, we need to know where to find the thermals and what they're like. And there's kind of 2 main concepts for how you can find a thermal. So one is just get a thermal which is on the hill. So just like this, we're on the hill, there's a thermal. If you look, as we go up, the thermal gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's something you'll find the higher you are, the wider the thermals are. So that's somewhere you can find a thermal. This setup, a big booming thermal on the hill, is more common like if you're in the mountains, there's like a south-facing mountain, bare rock which is facing into the sun, that's just going to suck up like all the air that's available to it, and there won't be any other lift anywhere because this mountain is just hoofing up all of the air. But that one is not really what we find on our small hills in the UK. So what's more common for us is that there's a big thermal out the front of the hill. And when I say out the front of the hill, I don't mean like 5 seconds of glide in front of the hill, I mean at the front of the hill. Like, say, 300, 500 metres, kilometre out in front of the hill. And what you'll still feel, you'll definitely be like ridge soaring, you'll feel little bumps. But they're normally like a wispy bit of lift, which is just kind of blown off that main bit of thermal. Sometimes as well, here, it can actually be quite turbulent because you're getting these like little shitty bits of thermal come off. They're small, they can be a bit sharp, they're windswept, so you might be like ridge soaring, it feels really bumpy and unpleasant. The glide is like moving around a lot, it's because you're flying in this like chaff, rubbish, little thermal stuff. And what you need to do is get out front of the hill, and that's where you'll find the big thermal. So, yeah, you may well find a really nice climb on the hill, particularly here in Sussex. Like you might be flying on the hill, you're probably a bit below the top of the hill. So if you do find like a really nice strong climb and say you count to 4 and it's going up really nicely on the hill, and that's really good. What you might want to do is start with some S-turns. So instead of going straight into your 360s, close to the hill, where if you get your ground speed messed up, you might get really close to the hill, or you might just get off put by the hill. If we're down here, the thermal's really small, you might want to just do some S-turns to get started. If you're S-turning in a small thermal on the hill, and you actually want to stay in the thermal, it's not like, oh, I'm going to do a turn and fly along for a bit, and then I'm going to do a turn. It will feel to you guys pretty much, if you're doing it right, it's going to feel to you like wing overs. It's like turn, wing starts to flatten out again, immediate turn again, flattens out again, immediate turn again, you know, so quite a tight S-turn that you need to do to establish, to keep the glider inside this little thermal.
Would you do most of that by weight shift?
Probably a bit both. Like, it has to be pretty tight, so it's like weight shift, brake. Obviously you don't want to turn it into a wing over, but probably at your level, it'll probably feel quite a lot like that, like it's turn. As soon as it's level, you turn again. As soon as it's level, you turn again. So you start with those S-turns, and if you are getting them in the thermal, then you'll start to climb up. You'll either get above the hill, or like the hill, you know, that top of the hill is further back, right? You'll start to see a bit of space, and then as soon as you can, you want to switch to 360s, because the S-turn is like destroying the golden rule. It's super inefficient, and you've got a massive sink rate when you're S-turning. As soon as it's safe to, you want to switch to 360s. So, that's easy. Easy to understand, right? You just do your restoring, wait for a massive climb to come along, do a few S-turns, do a 360, and you're on the hill and you're going up and everything's good. So, that is good, but it's always busy where we are. The chances that you're going to find somewhere to be doing like reasonably tight S-turns without getting in someone's way, or checking your airspace and seeing someone in the way, is pretty low. And
frustratingly,
yeah. Like I said, you can turn the negative into a positive and use those guys to work out where you're climbing. And it's not that common here, it's pretty uncommon that you're going to like S-turn, that you're going to find like a really booming climb on the hill. You can just S-turn the 360 and go away. That's not that common here in the UK. If you go out to the mountains, then, you know, this is pretty standard. But the other thing is try to get out in front of the hill and try and find that big climb that's like out in the flats. So, how do you get out the front of the hill without going down and landing at the bottom? What you need to do is learn how to follow lifty lines. Does anyone have experience of that? Yeah, Paul? Yeah? Yeah, so this is like a really cool thing to start practicing even before you do thermaling. This is like a really nice technique that you can work on to just get you away from the hill, start to just break that like being tied to the hill thing that you come out of school with. It's just use these lifty lines. And so, lifty line technique, so I'm flying along the ridge, fairy goes beep, 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 wait for a few seconds, still beep, 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 and all I'm going to do is turn dead upwind. And I'm going to go hands are right up. If you go hands right up, you get like a lot more feel off of the wings. So hands right to the pulleys, no brake. If it's super turbulent, you might want to go hands right to the pulleys, but not in the UK. Hands right up, you'll feel the wing a lot better. If you are flying into the wind and you look through your legs, if you're flying dead into the wind, the ground should just be coming straight, like flowing straight between your legs. If you're not with the wind, you'll see like the ground is either kind of coming this way or that way. Then you've got to turn that way to get the ground lining up with your legs, and then you know you're flying straight into the wind. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's a really good thing to practice. So you're just going to wait for a bit of lift, turn yourself upwind, keep looking through your legs to see that you're going upwind, hands up, and a lot of the time, what you'll find is you'll probably end up heading straight into the wind in a zero. Like your vario will probably go quiet, or might just be a few little beeps. If you've got the altitude on your vario, you'll probably see it's just sort of going gently up and down, but it's not, you're not really going down, you're not really going up, but you're getting out in front of the hill. then what you usually find, you're flying out into the wind and like the left side of the glider will lift a little bit. If that happens, just a tiny little bit of left weight shift or a little bit of left brake just to bring the glider level again. Okay, fly along, still just going along, right side lifts a bit, just a little bit of weight shift just to correct it, and just keep yourself flying, keep the glider nicely above your head, heading upwind. If you keep going upwind and you're not going down, just keep going. That's your lifty line technique, and you'll find that one of two things will happen. Either you will follow that lifty line and you'll hit a thermal, which is great, or you'll follow that lifty line and eventually it will die and you'll start to go down. If that happens, you just want to head back to the ridge, get yourself back up, get to a nice altitude and repeat. That's your basic lifty line, and that's a really nice thing to practice. It helps you just get up front.
Is it true that before you actually hit the thermal, you might feel something and go down?
Yeah, that can happen if it's like a big thermal. That can happen totally.
You don't want to turn back before because of that, or because?
No, so one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit is like a sort of return to the ridge altitude. So you're right, you don't want to turn back if you're in like a little bit of sink, and that might be the bit of sink before the booming thermal. But what you also don't want to do is start to get out front of the hill and then find your low, and then the only thing you can do is bottom land, because then you're going to waste an hour packing your kit and walking back up and blah blah blah. So when you start, it could be enough just to follow a lifty line out like 100 meters, maybe go down a little bit and just come back to the hill, top your altitude up, and then you're flying. You know, you keep flying, keep practicing, keep flying, keep getting back to the hill. You know, maybe like a bit lower than where you started, but high enough up that the ridge lift's going to take you up again. That's a good thing to get started, and then you can start to get a bit more adventurous as you get a bit more comfortable with that.
When I'm flying lifty lines, like sometimes I get this feeling I'm walking on a tightrope and it's trying to push me off.
Yeah.
Something all the time. So it's like,
Yeah.
just sometimes I've found that just S-ing my way through the lifty line helps me find where it actually is. Just gently.
Yeah.
Just
I think it's kind of the same thing I'm
through.
describing, right? So it sort of pushes you away, and you just lean into it, and then you're just pulling yourself back onto that line. Yeah. So that's good. So the ideal thing would be, what you'll find if you watch some more experienced pilots, if you're looking around, like this is what everyone's doing, so doing the lifty lines, trying to get up to thermal. So ideally, with you guys, you might feel something and, okay, airspace is clear, I'm going to turn upwind, and oh look, like in front of me there's a bird climbing, or even better, there's a bunch of gliders climbing, right? That would be perfect. So then you know there's a good chance that if I just follow this lifty line, I'll get to the climb, and get out nice and far in front of the hill, miles away from the hill. Okay, hopefully really nice and far out. There's not too many people around. There's no chance of you crashing into the hill because you're miles in front of it. You go straight to 360s, and you do your 4 for 90. You keep moving around trying to get the climb, get the climb, get the climb. And then what will often happen is, this could be quite weak. You'll be going up like a little bit, and you'll come back to the hill, you'll be going up, going up. Everyone who's ridden is like down here, you come back here and you hit that magnet effect, and then the climb just gets a bit better. You can just take that up, keep moving those 360s around, keep trying to find the lift, and then if you get over sort of the flat bit at the top of the hill, you can either go cross country or you can go back upwind again, try and follow the lifty line and see if you can sort of get back to the climb again. So, what's good about this technique? You're probably going to find better climbs. When you're out front, it's probably going to be less busy, so you don't have to worry so much about other people. All the good pilots are out there, so there's a much better chance of you following someone good if you do that than if you're on the ridge. You start to break that thing of like obsessively being on the ridge of the hill, which is like a stage that you guys need to get through in your paragliding of just ditching that completely. You get a lot more freedom that way. It's like really fun, you know, you're not just flying fucking 100 meters where the ridge is, you've got the whole world to go and fly in. That's like an amazing feeling, I think. And honestly, like, if you're going to find a good climb in the UK, it's going to be out front, so there's a much better chance of you finding a good thermal if you go with this technique. The bad thing is, if you go too far out front and you don't connect with the climb, then you might go and land.
You were saying that if you find lift sort of count to 4 and then turn into it,
Yeah.
if you actually encounter sync when you're going out front, is there sort of like a counting, the same kind of thing where you start saying, actually I should probably turn back?
I use that turn to hill altitude basically. So say that you launch and your vario is reading, like the altitude on the vario is reading like 400 foot, you maybe climb a bit of the ridge to 500 foot, then I'll do like my first lifty line, and when I get to 400 foot I'll just turn back to the hill and I'll see where I get to. If I come back and I get into like loads of ridge lift and fire up and it was like really easy to climb again, then I might give myself like another 50 foot. So I'll keep going to like 350 foot, but if I get down to 350 foot, I'll come back to the hill, and you can kind of start calibrating it like that, you know, so that you've got an altitude that's the altitude. If you give up and you'll be able to climb back up and you'll be able to keep flying. So
Yeah.
that's what I'd do. As you do more and more of the lifty lines and you come into more and more thermals, you kind of build up a gut feel for what's good, because you're right, like there might be loads of sync and that's an indication of like a really strong climb. I don't know, that's like in here now that there's a good chance that I can tell the difference between what's the sync coming up to thermal or what isn't, but that comes with hours, right? So the best thing is just to be able to keep flying all day.
Is there any identifiers of a lifty line?
Just that you're not going down, pointing upwind,
So pretty
not
much
going down,
until
just keep going.
gotcha.
That's it.
Very narrow.
Mhm.
It's not like a thermal. It's just a really narrow band, a really narrow lifty line. Like Paul was saying, it feels like a tightrope.
Do you happen to have a vario?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have the sync alarm on? So you might find that you're still going down at 0.5, but because you would normally be going down at 1, that's still rising air. So you're kind of looking for that. You're looking for very, very short peak.
Right.
You could almost be going down. The lifted line more likely is a good one. Would be more likely you'll go up a little bit. But you're just looking for either no noise from your vario, as it's a 0, or you're looking for little beeps going down. So just check how sensitive your vario is. If you're kind of ridge soaring, you're not really hearing anything, you might find that your vario doesn't have the sync alarm or something like that on.
Right. I think it is a very low setting for the sync alarm.
We're going to talk about various settings in a minute, because that sounds like that needs some work.
Can I ask, what is a lift line? What is a lifty line?
I think it's really just, I mean, I don't know, who knows, but I think it's really just like you sort of got all these like mincy bits of thermals and they kind of like line up with the wind, so you sort of connect these little lines of lift and then...
Alex Colton's got a theory that the air goes around a thermal and then creates this what's it called?
Like a sort of convergence thing.
Convergence. It creates a little convergence because it's kind of comes around it like that. You know, because the thermal gets wider as it goes up, so the air comes around it and goes like that, and then creates this little convergence line. I'm not sure if that's true or
I've
not.
got half a feeling that what's going on with that is also pulling some of the warm air along with it.
Yeah.
So you're getting this like slightly warmed air as it's passing through the thermal, but it's that's also helping the convergence.
I've heard it looks almost like a teardrop shape. So you've got the big thermal as your head, and then it kind of tails
heavy hits on the
back.
tail, yeah.
Yeah.
I think lines up.
Probably a little bit of each, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
this one is probably what is going to stop all of you guys from actually following this technique, because look, I appreciate that it's not very fun to go out for your day flying, like one of the few days you get out and like go out away from the ridge where you know you're going to be able to stay flying, and then you just land at the bottom of the hill and have to walk up. I mean, it would be good, you know, if you're slope landing, then that's better, right? If you didn't manage to get back to the hill and climb up again, you do like slope landing and just walk up a bit. But what I'd say is, do you all know Gandhi? Do you all know what he looks like?
Yeah, he's a bitch.
Yeah. Well, Carlo, can you recognise Carlo? I mean, look, try to get to know some of the really good pilots on the hill, and if you, for example, if you're not flying, like maybe it's a bit too windy for you or something, or a bit too light for you, maybe people are just staying up in thermals and there's no wind, and so that's tricky conditions for you. Use that time to watch the good pilots, they land at the bottom more than you think, because they just don't care. Like, it's so much more fun being out at the front, and it's such a great feeling if you end up like somewhere 2 miles in front of the hill, like 150 foot, and you manage to scrabble your way back to the hill. That feels so good. That's worth if you land into the bottom. So I think, you know, ideally you're just going to go out on your lifty line and come back and scratch up. But sometimes you're going to land out, and you know, so if you're going to land, try to slope land rather than bottom land, because then you can get back to the top of the hill and get flying again. But embrace it. It's part of learning. You'll learn a lot more by trying this and landing sometimes, and keeping practicing than you will just by ridge soaring and not learning anything after a while. So yeah, if you don't believe me, sit on a hill and watch people, and you'll find all the good guys, this is what they do. And they do land at the bottom for slope land. It happens to everyone. But you've got to do it if you're going to
I
get better.
would put it quite succinctly. The fear of landing at the bottom stops people from learning. It's like a...
Correct. Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. 90% of the air is going down and 10% is going up. So if you don't know what you're doing and you're going to fly through that air, there's a very good chance you're going to end up at the bottom of the hill. But I think the thing is, like, not to beat yourself up about it. It's not because you're like a shit pilot. You might just like found some horrible sink and that's it. Or you might just be learning. And so it's all part of the learning curve, and I think you just need to embrace it. Vario settings. Who knows what the vario settings are?
Not what I'm supposed to set them at.
Does anyone know what settings they can do on their change on their vario?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What can you change?
Everything, sync rate and...
The sound it makes,
Yeah,
the speed, but you can turn it off when you don't want to hear it going down.
yeah. So that's like a dead band. So that's one of the things you can change. Is like, it's called dead band. So it's the area that your vario doesn't do anything.
Averaging.
Averaging. What can you change about the averaging?
Length of time.
Yeah, length of time of your averager. So those are two key vario settings that almost definitely you guys don't have set up correctly. So in the UK, a good climb is 0.5 up. An okay climb is 0.1 up. If you've got your vario on its normal stupid alpine settings where it's a dead band from like -1 to +2, you're not even ever going to get any information off of your vario that applies to UK flying whatsoever. So in the UK, no difference. You want to be able to hear 0.1 up, you want to be able to hear 0.1 down, you want to be able to hear the difference between 0.1 down and 0.2 down, the difference between 0.1 up and 0.2 up. So get rid of the dead band. The XC Tracer has this thing where it's like, if you're in sort of between -0.5 and +0.5 or something, it's like it's actually beeping more frequently, so you get more information there, just around the zero, like it's going beep, 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 beep. And then when you get into strong line, it's just like beep, beep, beep. So if you can change that thing of like the frequency of the beeps, if you've got a vario that does that, that's really good.
Just repeat that again. You want your vario to be making a
noise all the time.
Noise all the time. So no switching off the down sound,
No.
because you're fed up with
No.
being told you're endlessly going down.
So right, works if you fly in the mountains, it doesn't work here.
I was told not to use one until I'd done about 10 hours.
Yeah,
they said
probably.
that they're a distraction you don't need at the beginning.
That's probably fair for the first 10 hours, but ultimately, like, you're not going to be very good at thermaling if you're 1,000 foot up if you don't have a vario. So
when you're low to the ground, it's somewhat easier to know whether you're going up or down because you've got a reference point that's close. If you're at 1,000 feet,
Because I mean, I have got one, but then I can't remember who it was said then, and they said, "Oh, don't bother with that until you've done about 10 hours."
yeah, how much time are you spending going down versus going up?
What, me? I've only
Yeah.
had one good flight,
Well, if you've only had one flight, then I would maybe.
and I
vary
slope
off a
landed
little
on my arse.
bit. Hey, you survived it.
It was more sensible because it was really thick grass, and I thought, I don't know what's there. So I just put my legs out and glided gently into the slope. Along it. I wasn't
That's
like
what your
dead.
airbags for.
I know,
Gotta
that's
use
what I
it.
thought. I thought, why don't we just do it like
You
this?
landed
So much easier.
What's your spine is less
Exactly.
strong than your leg muscles.
So we want to set it at 0.1.
You just want to get rid of any dead bands, so there's
Okay, no
normally.
dead bands.
Yeah, no dead bands, so it should be making noise from -0.1 and +0.1.
Just to clarify, the in and around the zero, you're saying that you want the averager to be a shorter time.
No, it's like on the XC tracer, it's like literally the frequency of beeps that you get is more when the lift is weak. So
like more real time, it's sort of like every time a second it's only really going up and down, but like when it's like flying up or
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Part of the sync-on feature.
Yeah. So I don't know how to set up a million different variants to do that, but if you can find something like that on your Vario or buy an XC tracer, like all the good pilots, then it's recommended.
Shots fired.
Yeah, it's not really shots fired. All the best pilots, all the top pilots have an XC tracer.
That's why they're not available anywhere.
Yeah, you get a second-hand one.
Yeah.
I've got an XC Tracer 1 in my house that I can sell for a very good price now I've found out.
I've got a fiver.
Yeah, supply and demand, mate. So, dead bands, get rid of them. Really unhelpful. A lot of people's kit I've borrowed has like a dead band. They were just like flying around like, I don't know, nothing's happening. Useless. Your averager averages over a certain length of time. We're going to aim for 4 for 90, so a 16-second circle. So set your average for 16 seconds, and it will tell you your average over one circle, which is actually useful. So go and do that. In the UK, like I have said many times, a 0 is a good climb, a +0.1 is a good climb. Some things about that. A 0 will sound horrible for at least half the turn. So it's like sync alarm for half the turn, a lift alarm for half the turn is like fine for a 0. So it can be, you hear all that sync and you think you're like a terrible pilot and everything's shit and to give up. But you want to try and break out of that mindset and it can be sync half the turn and lift the other half and it's alright. And what I find is helpful as well as the averager is to have the altitude, like your altitude, not above ground level, like your normal barrow altitude there, and then just be looking at that, because sometimes it's like you do a 360, you start at 360 foot, you finish at 361 foot, and it's like, doesn't read anything on the averager, and it sounds horrible, be like, oh actually I went up 1 foot in that 360, so this is cool. I'll do another one, and then you might just go up another foot and another foot, and it sounds not great, but if you watch the altitude, you'll actually find you're climbing, and that's something that's really good to keep thermaling in. So, yeah, the things that I really just use the averager and the altitude and the beeps is the only thing that I look at, like, regularly when I'm flying. All the other stuff. So I actually have my XC tracer with just altitude, averager, beeping, and glide ratio that I use. I've got that as one instrument, and then all of that like XC stuff is on like a different instrument that I don't even really look at, to be honest. So that's what you want to be able to see, and that's what you want to be able to hear. We talked about our return to hill height now, so I don't need to go into that again, but that's a really good one, right? So fly out. If you lose the lift, fly back to the hill, see what altitude you're at when you flew back to the hill. If you end up slope landing, then your return to hill height's a bit higher. If you end up easily just coming back to the ridge, say like a ridge height, then you could have gone out a bit further, dropped down a little bit more before you go up and came to the ridge. If you've gone on like a really cool lifty line and you're miles out front of the ridge and you just don't connect with the thermal, often if you turn round and just aim straight back at the ridge, you'll just hit shitloads of sync and you'll bomb out. So a better thing to do is just, you've gone along your lifty line, or it's just sort of petered out, just maybe try 360 straight away, or turn back a bit and then do a 360, but you want to try to find even like a -0.5. If you fly straight back to the hill, you're going to get, there's a good chance you're going to get drilled in like a 2 down and then up right at the bottom of the hill. If you can find a -0.5 even, and just circle that back to the hill, you'll find you barely lose any height before you get back to the hill. You get back to the hill really nice and high and you keep flying. That could be the difference between a slope landing or a bottom landing and just getting back to the hill at a nice altitude. So that's a really good one. Just to try to use the 0 to get back to the hill. Really nice one to practice. Yeah, we talked about this one. You're going to land at the bottom a lot. But try not to bottom land, try to slope land. And if you slope land, so first of all, if you're not good at kiting, like if you slope land sort of 1/3 of the way down, say like the beginner hill at Caburn, you just have to walk up like 50 metres, then you probably feel fine, you might rest for like a minute and you can go flying again. If you land right at the bottom of that slope and you've got to hoik your wing up like mushroom duck for that whole hill, you'll be absolutely knackered by the time you get back to the hill. You're not going to go flying for half an hour. So try to, you're going to land, definitely, except if you can land that bit higher, then you'll have more energy when you get back up. If you want to do more flying, you'll get more out of the day.
Just with Caburn, don't try and land behind the trees by the road. That is, I think, is it still a butterfly nature reserve?
Yeah, it's like special scientific interest.
Yeah, and also
Rotor
the
as well.
rotor is atrocious there.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't bottom land below that beginner slope anyway, right? You have to land on the slope, not on Steve's training bit.
So how do you know that, Tom?
If you've got on the dome.
How do you know that, Tom?
Oh, I personally haven't experienced it, but I've seen a very, very scary video.
And don't kite up on the main hill,
Yeah, don't kite on the main hill, but so really good thing for you guys to learn. I mean, first of all, at your level, you should be doing lots of ground handling. I know that it cannot be that fun when you start, but it's only not fun because you haven't done enough of it. Once you kind of get it, it's a lot more fun. I'm not out on the hill a lot when I'm not flying, but I really like ground handling. So if you manage to find me and I'm not in the air, then I'd love to do ground handling coaching with you guys. But what will make your day a million times better when you're learning how to thermal is just learning how to kite your way back up the slope at Caburn. So, just doing that one of like pull the wing up, it pulls you up the hill, you pull the brakes and land it again. If you can just even learn that one of like pull up, walk 5 metres, land it, start with that, and then you can get better and just be like balancing the wing and having to pull up the slope. You've got to put a few hours in to learn that, but it's not too bad, it's just hours. And if you can kite up the hill, you can land at the bottom, you can kite up the hill, it takes like a minute, 2 minutes, don't use any energy, launch straight back in the air, repeat. The difference between that and like land at the bottom of the hill, mushing the glider up, missing your way up the hill, finish sweaty and exhausted, you're not going to be able to do that more than a couple of times in the day. So, that's a really good reason to be practicing your ground handling to get that kiting good, so that you can afford to land at the bottom more and try more things and get away from the hill and have lots of fun and not burn your energy. Cool. For those of you who are a bit more experienced and want to try some tight turns, so if we're going to do mirroring the air and we are flying like bullet thermal is like a tight thermal that's quite strong, you'll find it's like you fly into the thermal, the wing will go back, it's like feels really hard to like do anything, it's just like really strong. If you come out the front, the wing will dive and it's got energy, then you can do weight shift and get on the inside brake quickly. So it's like pitch forward and then throw yourself into a turn, that will have a lot more energy, so then you can really like crank the wing up, again, like build up to it. Another really nice one is turn reversals, so maybe you're like going out on your lifty line, you hit a pretty strong core that you want to turn tight into, so just like let the wing drift to the left and then turn right, and that energy of going left to right will just give you a bit more energy to let you like really turn tightly into a sharp core. So those are a couple of things to practice. Again, start small, but you could just practice like, going along out front, you've got your hands up, put a little bit of brake on, let it go, and have a little dive and just throw some weight shift on and just see how that feels. Just to start learning how to build up the energy a bit more. And this is my opinion, if you've got 500 foot above the hill in the UK, then just keep going. Like this is, I don't know, one of the really good things about the UK is such a good place to go cross country. Of course, you've just got like landing fields everywhere, right? I mean, I'm not encouraging you to do something that you're uncomfortable with, but what a thermal feels like in front of the hill, climbing up a couple of 100 foot, and then like you don't want to go over the back of the hill, so you glide forward again. Like that's not really the whole thing of thermaling. So if you can get kind of 500 foot up and maybe just follow a zero, take it over the back of the hill, the whole thermal feels different. You lose that being connected to the ridge thing. you might just be in a zero and you just practice like drifting back in a zero for like 5-10 minutes. So I think that's my view. 10-15 minutes of trying to stay up from 500 foot in a zero and landing like by the wind turbine at Caitlin's, say, for me that's like worth an hour of ridge soaring or 2 hours of ridge soaring. So for me, if you've got nicely high, just stay with that climb, see what happens. You'll have an adventure and you'll get a lot more therming practice and it'll be really fun. And yeah, so it's all about zeros. So you could go to Coombs a bit, get to 4,000 feet and sit in a zero for 4 hours and then you'll be back in Brighton. And you didn't do any gliding or any climbing. You've got infinite glide ratio in the zero, right? And we don't have loads of super strong climbs, so a lot of flying in the UK is just about getting out front, climbing a little bit, finding a zero and just staying up, keeping your feet off the ground for as long as possible. So that's a skill that you can practice doing your lifty lines and finding a zero and drifting back to the hill. That's like the start of it, but it's not going to be, here in the UK it's kind of likely to be like 3 meters a second booming climb straight out to cloud base. It's going to be weak climbs. A lot of the time the variable won't sound that great, but if you're watching your averager, if you're watching at altitude and you're going up, just stay with it, keep practicing, move that turnaround, stick to the golden rule, keep yourself really smooth and just see what happens.
What are you, when you say infinite glide ratio, since glide ratio is what which takes you down to the ground,
yeah.
Are you saying that once you've got to a particular point you can get an infinite glide ratio?
I'm just saying, if you're in a zero, you're going horizontally, your glide ratio is infinite, right? You're just going horizontally.
Oh, I see, because you're not sinking.
So glide ratio is normally measured in still air.
Yeah.
If the air is going up at the same rate as you're coming down,
then you're going to be
then
going
in practice
somewhere.
you've got an infinite glide ratio.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, sorry, that's quite a pretentious way to put it. But, cool.
It's not a magic bit of air that one can aim to get that.
Yeah, that's what, like, there's loads of zero. There's a lot more zero air than anything else in the UK, so it is the magic bit of air you can aim to get at.
Okay.
Totally. Cool. So I thought I would end with a case study. This is a long time ago, so let me see if I can remember what was happening. So if I remember correctly, this was a super windy day at Devil's Dyke, so could not be the best case study from that perspective. But so it's quite windy and quite westerly, and so I didn't really want to be ridge soaring because it was uncomfortable ridge soaring. It was quite westerly. It was a bit turbulent. So to stay safe, I wanted to stay out in front of the hill. So you can see I've done like a little bit of ridge soaring, but like all the time I've been trying to follow these lifty lines. You can see one there, you can see one there, over here, a bit. So I've been trying to fly out, away from the hill where it's safer in strong wind, and trying to find a climb out front. What I think happened here, see, what else can we see that's interesting? Yeah, you can see I managed to get up a little bit, but I was over the flat bit of the hill in strong wind, not very high, so I've gone straight out from there. I haven't tried to go over the back of the hill low in the compression zone because that's not a good place to be. I think what happened here was I saw a huge flock of like 100 birds that was basically circling there, and I've gone out to it. I don't know if you can see, this is pretty low, like it was miles below hill height, but I could see those birds were there and they were going up, so it's like it's going to work, and I wanted to not be anywhere near the hill anyway, so that was good. This is out front, so that's the bottom landing at Devil's Dyke. I am level with that and a bit more to the west, so that's quite far out. But I've managed to get that far out. I think that this colour is sort of I think that's the climb rate, so you can see that the climb started pretty weak, right? And it drifted back, I've hit the hill, boom, that's the magnet effect. Right there, climb rate's gone up massively just when I hit the hill, and that's got really nice. I've got a really nice climb. You can see, you know, it's not like smooth circles, right? You can see it's moving like this way and that way, trying to find where the lift is good, but it's pretty consistent chord to about here, and this was nowhere near cloud base, and just said the clients move, they disappear. I followed that climb upwards. So I probably lost the climb, probably the beeping stopped, but I haven't just like blundered off. It's like I'm looking around, trying to find the climb, listening to it might be a bit stronger, a bit stronger. So I've gone downwind here. That's pretty much 0, so just keeping with that 0, and then eventually it gets like a little bit better, and then I've maybe got through whatever was causing that, the wind shear, a little bit of inversion, maybe just like the thermal shifted for whatever reason, found another strong bit again, and then off. That's how it goes.
So what height are you at the top of that?
It's cross country, 3 grand, 3.5, 4. Yes. Hi.
Where did you land?
Oh my way.
Don't know. How do you think that is? That must be Eastbourne, right? It's either by the wind turbines, so it's out toward Pevensey.
Okay.
Pevensey is 50k, so you can do 50k pretty easily. Once you get up. Keep
Okay,
going.
so when you're in a thermal like that, do you take the wind's direction into account as to which way the thermal's drifting?
So you will see the thermal drift because so we have quite strong wind, right? So if I'm looking between my legs, I'll see that I'm going, I think this wind is kind of west-northwest, so I'm going the other way, like east-southeast. So I see the drift, but what the wind is doing has nothing to do with what I'm doing with the climb. I'm not like going more upwind or downwind or whatever, you're just trying to do a smooth circle all the time. Find that bit that's a bit stronger, shift over to it, and you're just naturally getting drifted downwind, but it's not like the wind has nothing to do with it, basically. It may be, you know, one of the techniques you can do, particularly when you're trying to get up, is like you get up a little bit, you get to the back of the hill, you glide out, try to glide back to the same place that you found it, so you can do that a few times. Sometimes you can like step up, but apart from thinking about that, like really when you're actually 360ing, the wind's got nothing to do with it, basically. Cool.
So you stuck with it right the way up to cloud base,
Yeah.
and then went with it.
Yeah, like
In
the
cloud
next
base.
cloud, I guess. Not in the cloud,
Well,
don't go in the clouds.
Well, it looked like there a pretty blue sky day.
That's because that's Google Earth. It doesn't have clouds on it.
Is that superimposed then over a Google Earth?
Yeah, you can do that with your Vario once you turn it on. You can download the tracks and put them on Google Earth. It's not too hard to do.
I don't think mine's that sophisticated.
It might not be a GPS one, but if you get,
No.
you know, you can put
I just got a little tiny little
yeah, put a tracker. You can put a tracker on your phone and get a tracker up of it. It's not the best,
Just
but
transfer the track across to it and just do that.
yeah. Just download like XC track or something, put it in your pocket, tracker or anything, and you can start to have a look at your track logs. It's quite a fun thing to do.
You also use Fly Sky High.
Yeah. Whatever phone up.
Yeah, I've got some.
Only if you've got
Yeah, I've got that Fly Sky High one. Yeah.
Put
I
it
haven't
on.
used it yet because I haven't been anywhere.
Stick it in your pocket.
Put it on, turn the logging on, stick it in your pocket, and then you can see what your track logs are like. That's like a fun thing to do. Definitely. Cool. Nice one.
Thank you, Ked.
Thank you.
Will you make slides available?
I can do, but if you're on the coaching Telegram,